It's now my great pleasure to reintroduce to you Wai Wai Nu, who's an inspiring fighter for democracy. She's a member of Myanmar's Rohingya minority, and she was made a political prisoner at the age of 18, sentenced to 17 years in prison at the age of 18, if you can imagine that. She was released in 2012 after serving 7 years, and she's gone on to complete a law degree in California and to continue her fight for democracy in Myanmar, which is particularly under challenge in 2021. So I'd now like to welcome her, if we can get her up on the screen. Hi, Wai Wai.
Hello.
I hope you heard that introduction I gave you. We've obviously all followed this devastating turn of events in your home country in 2021. At least 700 killed, I'm sure many more when we can get to the bottom of it, 3,000 political prisoners. That's obviously the price of the military trying to enforce its illegitimate rule. But it's very hard, I think, for some of us to know exactly what's going on day to day because of the communication blackouts, because of the attacks on journalists. So I was wondering if you could give us your reading of the situation. What is the latest that you are hearing? How is this heroic resistance holding up? We've all seen some of the images of your compatriots fighting against the military, and what is your take on it?
Thank you very much, Brian. Thank you for having me. I'm very honored to speak to you today and to be joining this important summit. First of all, the people of my country, Myanmar, have fought for democracy for decades, from our independence from the British in 1948 and our mass uprising against the military dictatorship in 1990s and to today. And I have seen my father himself has fought for democracy his entire life. Now again, since the February military coup on the February 1st, our people have engaged in, as you said, non-violent civil disobedience movement on the street to the protests against the military coup for a true democracy that they have never seen. Aside from three fingers salute from Hunger Games, we have also adopted many creative ways to fight against the military, such as organizing now, another way, a guerrilla-style protest during the daytime and at nighttime, banging pot and pan, and even like a feminist movement called Tamang or Sarong revolutions, using the femininity against the masculine, a very masculine military. However, as you said, now it's actually 100 days. Tomorrow is going to be 100 days since coup. The military has killed over 700 people and arbitrarily detained and arrested more than 3,000 people within 100 days. As I speak now, the junta is unlawfully arresting people at night and killing people at daytime. And they have even killed children as young as 6 and tortured women in detains. And just this week, a poet called Katti was arrested and his body was returned to his family the next day. It was yesterday. And this is like daily experiences of Myanmar, people in Myanmar today. And this is just an example of how people have been experiencing coup. As I speak, the protests are ongoing, and the civil disobedience movement, the government staff, public servants stop going to the office is ongoing, and there are many other forms of protests and protest against the military is ongoing. At the same time, as I said, military is hunting after these young people, killing young people and arresting them. And many of them who have been detained already have even no information about their whereabouts. So this is very extremely concerning. And I would say this is the darkest moment of our time in Myanmar.
If I could maybe ask you to tell us a bit more, give us a flavor of the many flavors of democratic activists in Myanmar. I think a lot of outsiders have reduced your movement to the National League for Democracy, or they know the name Aung San Suu Kyi, and they don't know how decentralized and how rich the tapestry is of people who are fighting for democracy. Can you explain a little to the audience about that?
Of course. So recently, National League for Democracy have formed a national unity government alongside with their winning parliamentarian in the past elections in 2020 November. So aside from that, actually, there's the protest and the democracy movement itself has been very, very decentralized. It started from the doctors and nurses and public servants, school teachers, from the day one of the military coup. So they started this civil disobedience movement, and then the street protest has started by young people, by young women, by workers and by laborers. So these protests has started from the very grassroots level. It wasn't actually organized by National League for Democracy. So and since then, the entire younger generation has come out to protest against the military coup and saying no more dictatorship, no more military dictatorship, and urging for a true democracy, an inclusive federal democracy that they wanted, that the country is needed so badly. Our country has never seen a true freedom and democracy since we've got independence in 1948. And now people really need, as the world is moving ahead, we are far left behind. And young people, our young generations, started to realize we deserve freedom, we deserve democracy so that we can move on. We can catch the world, the developing world. And that's the desire is the military coup is somehow a slap to their future, their dreams, and basically destroying the dreams for many young people. And I think that's the main reason why the democracy movement is so strong until now, after seeing so much of this brutal attacks and killings against the people.
If I could ask you now about the role of foreign governments and the support your movement needs from those governments, what is it that needs to be the highest priority? Is it a coordinated arms embargo? Is it coordinated sanctions against the many business interests of the military? Because that is essentially how they're funding themselves. Or is it something else that the protesters need to receive directly? What is it you want foreign governments to do next?
Definitely, we need support from everybody, from the governments, from the public at this time, more than ever. Know that this is our last chance for the fight for the democracy. And in the past, actually, the world has believed in flawed democracy as true democracy and failed to hold the military leaders accountable for their brutal crimes, especially the governments, including the US government and Western governments. And I now urge to support our calls, all the governments that include the referral of the situations of Myanmar to the International Criminal Court through the UN Security Council, and also, as you rightly pointed out, establishing a global arms embargo and imposing sanctions on the military and its businesses. These are three calls that we've been calling for. Even before the military coup, we haven't addressed the international crimes that has been committed by the military, and that is the very reason that why military coup could happen. And that's why we continue to call these three calls, and we need it more in a more comprehensive manner, a more coordinated manner. It's not going to work if one country and two countries impose these sanctions. We need it in a more comprehensive and coordinated response from the government.
Now, I have a question about ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, and I'm asking it because we've seen China and Russia blocking further action at the UN Security Council. We already know that democracies together support you, but ASEAN is a bit of a mixed body, and it will be led by the Cambodian dictatorship next year. So I'm wondering if there's just a small window of opportunity to try and squeeze something out of that regional player to support you, and what might that look like?
Yeah, I mean, we need to understand that ASEAN is one of the weakest regional institutions on earth. And given that their history of and human rights record of the ASEAN member state, I think it will be utterly wrong to expect ASEAN to bring the solutions for Myanmar. But again, we need support from the ASEAN countries. We need support from the neighboring countries. And I think it is important that the world realize what ASEAN is capable of doing and what their role should be. And then, move on to really support. Right now, I feel like the world is waiting for ASEAN to bring the solutions from Myanmar. And it's never going to happen. They might be able to interfere in like humanitarian, providing humanitarian support. We've been calling for this humanitarian corridor, ASEAN humanitarian corridor, and that is feasible. And they might be able to push military a little bit, but it doesn't necessarily mean military will listen to them and military will follow their consensus or their recommendations. Last month, we had the first ASEAN summit on Myanmar, but then the military continued to kill people, violently cracking down the protesters, and continue to consolidate their power instead of following any of this, even very weak consensus or recommendation they came across. So I think that is the very reason that we really need UN Security Council and the rest of the world, the governments, to take the actions that we've been calling for. Otherwise, the Burmese Myanmar military did not stage a coup to return the power. They're not going to do it, period, knowing that. So
well, that message is clear then. It's on the shoulders of democracies now to step in and take action.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's all we've got time for. I'm sorry, Wai Wai, but it's been an honor to hear your perspectives. So thank you very much for sharing them. And I now invite Jean back onto the stage for our next speaker. Thank you.